Solar webinar. I'm Lauri Keagle of South Shore Clean Cities. We have a terrific, diverse group participating today, and we're thrilled to have all of you with us, so welcome. We're excited to share information from our partners and members about how solar is being used and how it can be used successfully in our state, to dispel some myths about solar, address recent state legislation regarding net metering, and to offer support for those considering implementing solar into their practices. Today's presenters are Marc van Dongen of Midwest Wind and Solar, who will provide a mini Solar 101 course, Leah Thill of the Michiana Area Council of Governments, who will share information on the Solarize projects in the South Bend area, as well as information on Indiana Senate Enrolled Act 309, and Trisha Tull of Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, who will detail solar success stories within her organization. I will also be presenting some information about how South Shore Clean Cities can help with solar implementation. All attendees are muted and will stay muted for the duration of the webinar. You may ask questions in the question box at any time, which will be answered during the question and answer session at the end of the webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available in its entirety on our website, southshorecleancities.org. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Marc van Dongen of Midwest Wind and Solar.
Lauri, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today and talk a little bit more about some of the basics of solar. Midwest Wind and Solar is in right next doors, of course, here in Griffith, Northwest Indiana, and we appreciate the opportunity to give you a little bit of a background in terms of our company, but most of all, what solar can do for us here in the Northwest Indiana area. So without further ado, let me go to the next slide. Make sure I do that right. Yeah, a little bit of a introduction, as I said, go straight into the overview, share a couple of examples here in the local area, and then we'll wrap it up. Kevin Moore, our founder, started the company about 9 years ago, and basically the way we work is we offer turnkey solutions. Turnkey meaning that we start a process with a customer talking about their specific needs. We analyze their utility bills, come up with a tailored system, take care of all the interconnection and permitting work. We install, have our own crew, and then of course when everything is done, we finalize things with the utility and offer maintenance and services, even though with solar there's not a whole lot involved with that, but I'll get to that in a moment. We work in a variety of sectors, certainly residential, commercial and industrial, as you can see. Do a lot of work with schools as well as with municipalities. Examples like wastewater treatment facilities. Within the solar industry, it's really important to have the NABCEP certification, so we have that within our organization. And at the end of the day, it really does come down to being committed to understanding customers, recognizing that no situation is the same as the prior one. So we very much are about education and communication. It's something that we really try to take extra time to make sure that people understand what solar can do, and for that matter, what it cannot do. And part of that, of course, is making sure that we approach the installation with all the OSHA and other safety regulations that make a project successful from the get-go. Solar to a lot of people may seem new and a novel technology, but actually solar has been around for more than 40 years. It's actually technology that was really invented back in the 50s and was taken to a whole new level because of the innovation when it comes to crystalline silicon technology. Crystalline silicon is really the material that ultimately makes the solar cells, which is at the heart of a solar panel. In very simple terminology, a solar panel is glass with an encapsulant on the front and the back that protects the crystalline silicon cells. And the back of the solar panel is typically a treated, protected polyester layer, so no water or UV can penetrate from the back, negatively impacting the solar cells. Of course, there's a frame around the module, and that's basically your solar panel, and that through the glass allows for energy harvest going through the solar cells. The solar panel is used in conjunction with what we call an inverter. The inverter serves to take the energy harvest going from DC to AC. AC is really the current that is, most of the houses here in the US use AC current, so you need that inverter to convert your energy production on a solar panel. By function of that inverter, you can now use the electricity in your own facility, whether that's a house or a commercial facility, or for that matter, you can push any excess energy onto the grid, and you will get a credit for that, and that's part of what Lauri did up earlier in terms of net metering. Let me pause for just a quick moment on net metering, and maybe some of the other presenters will come to this as well. But really important to understand that net metering is not money flowing from the utility to the user. It's a credit that comes from the utility to the user. And currently here in the state of Indiana, that's a 1-to-1 ratio. So whatever you push on the grid, you get a full credit in terms of what net metering entails. So we move on to the next slide. As Lauri already mentioned earlier, there's a lot of conventional wisdoms about solar, particularly here in the Midwest. Oh, there's not enough snow, not enough sun, there's too much snow, it is too expensive. As you can see here on the slide, there's a lot of myths about solar. Fortunately, with education and these type of webinars, we can really get a better perspective on truly what the data is in terms of solar. As you can see in the next slide, actually here in the Midwest, we have an abundance of solar, and the potential for solar is tremendous. Yes, of course, there is more sun down in the Southwest, but a real interesting metric is actually in comparison, for that matter, is Germany. Germany, about 10 years, really kickstarted the global solar industry. And it turns out that actually that's particularly southern Germany, where most of the solar installations took place. It turns out that southern Germany has less sunlight than we have here in the Midwest. So the production capability of solar in the Midwest is really solid. And all of the proposals that we put together is based on local weathering data, 25-year type of data that allows us to really hone in on the exact potential for a customer here in the Midwest. So is there enough sun? Absolutely there is. Well, what about all that snow though? Yeah, it is very true that in those 3 winter months that the solar harvest is much less than, of course, in the summer months. But like I said earlier, the local weathering data allows for us to project the exact potential also in the winter months. So there's no surprises based on the local weathering data. Secondly, the snow actually does shed off the panels. Dependent on the roof, if it is a flat roof, there's usually about a 10-degree tilt. And even with only 10 degrees, the top of the panel gets heated a little bit. There's, as you can see in the picture here, typically a black background of a solar panel that allows for some thermal radiation. The panel will heat up and the snow starts to shed off. We very much recommend people not to go on any roof, or even if it's a solar array on the ground, it is really not worth the effort to clean the panels off snow. It sheds off pretty quickly, and once again, it's part of our proposals built into the figures. But once again, most importantly, from a safety point of view, please do not go on a roof to clear off the snow. Again, addressing the cost of solar. Yes, 10 years ago, solar industry very much needed incentives, subsidies in order to make the figures pencil out. That has changed, mostly because of scale in the industry. The industry globally has grown so much that prices have gone down tremendously, actually by about 70% over the last 7 years. And with that price reduction, really driven not only by scale but also innovation, we now see that a lot of projects are penciling out very nicely compared to maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The return on investment was simply not there. I already mentioned earlier that the technology has actually been proven, has been around and in place for many years. We see that particularly in the Southwest, which was in many ways leading the industry here in the US over the decades, that solar systems have been in place for over 40 years. Not only that, the National Research Energy Lab out of Colorado currently says that solar panels will easily last for up to 40 years. Importantly, though, is that the solar panel manufacturers actually provide a production guarantee for 25 years. So there's a lot of ways to reduce the risk and to feel comfortable with the longevity that solar actually will provide. Moving on to a couple of case studies. We've done some wonderful work here in Northwest Indiana with a couple of different schools. One of them that I'd like to highlight here is Tri Creek in Lowell, Northwest Indiana. Our first project was with them for a new transportation center about 2 years ago. We installed about 90 solar panels, which equates to about 23 kW. And we were fortunate enough that this array was on the ground, and that allowed us to work with some of the students and the science teachers to get some hands-on experience. The second phase in 2016 was actually a much larger array, over double that size, 59 kW. That partially came about because of the work with South Shore Clean Cities. We put in the grant application, which was awarded, and that allowed for a large part of this project to be financed through the grant. Since then, the school actually and the board followed through on a much bolder vision of looking at 4 out of their 5 school facilities to say, what can we do with solar to really maximize the utility bill reductions and free up really funding in their operating budget. Midwest Wind and Solar went through the RFP process with Tri Creek, and we were awarded the elementary schools. We have already finished up 2 out of the 3 facilities, and you can see that here on the first one, Lake Prairie, we installed about 828 panels, whereas in Three Creeks, we put in nearly 700 panels. All of these on the ground. Tri Creek was, I guess, in a fortunate position that they had plenty of land around the school facilities, so we could stay on the ground, and that allowed us also to put in some dummy array that allowed for educational support, working with the science teachers once again. Just to wrap it up on my side, and before I move on to the next presenters, really what we like to do is work with people to understand their needs, and for that matter, deal with the learning curve, just like what we're doing here this afternoon. Education, empowering people with data to understand what solar can do, and what some of the things are not possible to do with solar. Sometimes the facility is just not right, whether it's because of shading, whether it's because the electricity rate is already extremely low. So education is certainly first and foremost as we deal with our customers. Then we do an engineering and layout that is tailored to the specific situation, and we only use, of course, Tier 1 products, making sure that the warranty systems are fully in place and can be expected to last for 25 years. At the end of the day, that should translate into significant electricity cost savings for a customer. Quite often, we work with financing partners to finance the system. At times, meaning that a customer will not put any of their money into a project, and the entire project therefore is funded by a finance company. And of course, we also take care of any maintenance and service that may be in play. At the end of the day, of course, that also has a huge environmental impact in terms of carbon emission savings. I think with that, I'm going to thank the entire team here for the opportunity. And I turn it back, I think, to you, Lauri.
Yes, thank you, Marc. Lots of great information there. And I speak for everybody at South Shore Clean Cities when I say how excited and proud we are of the work that was done with Tri Creek Schools, and happy to be a part of that. I'd now like to turn it over to Leah Thill of the Michiana Area Council of Governments, or MACOG. Leah?
Yes, hi. This is Leah Thill. I am the environmental planner with MACOG. MACOG is the Regional planning organization that covers the counties here in northern Indiana of St. Joseph, Elkhart, Marshall, and Kosciuszko. And that does include South Bend and Goshen, those two cities. I'll talk a little bit about the work later. You can see the image here. This is the Solarize South Bend team members involved in a project here. But first, I'm going to review some state policy changes that are relevant to solar, as Marc did introduce net metering. And again, that is the process of crediting excess electricity that's sent to the grid, perhaps during the day when someone's at work, and then that credit can be used later when someone flips on a light switch when they come home from work, or those credits can be accumulated in July and used in December or the winter months to cover a time when there's less sun. But the key thing to understand about this state policy change, which affects net metering, is that there is a phase-out timeline, and the most important date is December 31st, 2017. So systems that are installed and the interconnection paperwork has been completed, those systems are eligible to be grandparented into the existing net metering system or policy for 30 years, so until 2047. However, starting on January 1st of next year, if a system is installed and after that point, then that timeline begins to tick down. So you can see that after that point, net metering would be available for about 15 years, and then the following year, 14, 13, 12 years, until you get to July 1st, 2022. And at that point, after that point, then net metering starts to go away, where someone who installs a system at that point does not get the retail credit. Instead, it will convert to a new system where the credit is wholesale plus 25%, but that is substantially less than retail. So that may be about a third of the value of retail. So that was effective in July, and starting on December 31st, that's when many people are aiming to have their systems installed. It's important to think about whether or not someone interested in solar would actually be affected by this policy change. Not everyone is impacted. The first thing to look at is who the utility provider is, if you are a school or a homeowner or business interested in solar. So the investor-owned utilities do fall in the category of those who are impacted. NIPSCO, Indiana, Michigan Power, or AEP up here in northern Indiana, or in other parts of the state that might be a few other utilities. So under this timeline, the financial benefits are best if a system is installed by that December 31st date. That is clear. However, I like to note that paybacks are anywhere from 9 to 14 years now, typically, depending on whether someone utilizes the 30% federal tax credit. And so if you think of it that way, the break-even point will be reached before those 15 years of net metering expire. So by year 16, if someone has planned ahead and installed a battery-ready system, perhaps year 16, they add batteries to their system, and then they have less excess electricity to export to the utility, and perhaps they would retain more value from their solar system. But the key there is to plan ahead, think about whether someone wants a battery-ready system, and to understand that the payback period, I would not expect the payback period to actually be changed by not getting 30 years of net metering if you're installed after December 31st. Now, looking at the other cases, if you are going off the grid, you will not be impacted by this policy change. On the other side, if you are with a municipal utility or rural utility, they have their own rules. So whatever the rule is now, maybe there's net billing or some other procedure for handling interconnection and the flow of excess power from solar. In that case, such as Mishawaka, someone would not be impacted. The other two cases are a little different. So if a very large entity, such as a university with a single meter, installs solar, it's likely that that solar system will be so small compared to the total demand or electricity use on that campus that there would never be a moment where excess electricity from the solar system would be sent out onto the grid. So in those cases with large consumers of power or 7 shifts and installs a solar system on the roof, there would never be excess to export. So that timeline for net metering is less important. The final case is something called a feed-in tariff that is different from net metering, and so it's not impacted. That's where someone sells all the power that's produced from their solar system directly to the utility. And NIPSCO does currently provide that program, so that those in feed-in tariff contracts are unaffected by the change. However, if someone expected that in 15 years when their contract's finished that they could convert to a net metering arrangement, that will no longer be possible, that they would not be grandparented into that arrangement, like someone who installed a system today and got net metering for 30 years. All right, so another important deadline to think about, I mentioned the December 31st day as being important for having an installation complete, but there are many things that come before that, submitting the actual interconnection application and any number of other barriers or roadblocks someone might run into, such as finding out they have a homeowners association with a covenant, maybe they're in a historic district and they need approval. So the earlier the better is really the rule here, because there may be things that cause unexpected delays. But this timeline that I have outlined here is directly from the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission webpage. They have issued some supplementary information related to the state policy change, and in this case, they highlighted October 19th as the date that someone should apply to be interconnected. So if you're thinking about solar for a home, business, or small school, this date is important if you're thinking about entering into a contract to install solar. All right, so in response to some of these changes, I've been involved in a project that the Michiana Area Council of Governments is supporting to help make it easier for people to install solar. And an effect of that is that by educating people and streamlining the process, it's also faster, not just easier, but faster to install solar by the end of the year if someone does want to meet that deadline to get grandfathered for 30 years of net metering. And a third element of this project is that it becomes cheaper for someone to go solar. So the initiative is called Solarize Northern Indiana, with two focal points, Solarize South Bend and Solarize Goshen. It's basically Costco for solar. So by leveraging and organizing a group of people, homeowners, businesses, churches, others, we're able to negotiate an upfront discount on those solar systems and an additional rebate based on the success or the participation of that program. The second benefit is that the Solarize initiative has done a lot of the legwork, the upfront, to pre-select an installer, the pricing, the equipment, through a steering committee that had representatives that were retired engineers, sustainability professionals, city staff, MACOG, and others. And that helps people avoid getting multiple quotes. And this, I would say, solar is a once-in-a-lifetime purchase for most people. It's about on the order of magnitude of a car, but most people don't know someone who has gone solar, and it's very difficult to make apples-to-apples comparisons with multiple quotes. So this has helped streamline that process so that people are getting equipment that is reliable and warranties have been reviewed and that kind of thing. The third benefit of the Solarize initiative is that we are trying to present information, make the process transparent and easier, because there can be multiple local processes for people to navigate, from homeowners associations, historic districts, permitting, inspection, zoning, and other items. And then we've simplified it into 2 decision points where people decide whether to move forward and to go solar or not as well. So one example of the Solarize initiatives, I mentioned South Bend, but I'd like to highlight Goshen here because the city of Goshen also was just awarded a designation from the Department of Energy Soul Smart program. They were awarded the gold level, which is the highest level. So the city of Goshen is now one of 44 cities in the United States that have been designated for making it easier, cheaper, and faster to go solar. So really worked well with the city of Goshen getting their own house in order, making it easier to go solar, to have this Solarize initiative launched this summer, this fall, to bring that information to people. One of those ways of making that easier was the website. You can see the link at the bottom, Going Solar in Goshen. So people can visit that website and get more information. But another reason I wanted to highlight Solarize Goshen is this map of solar systems here at 2011. And if you fast forward to 2016, you can see that the city of Goshen almost entirely disappears under a blanket of solar systems. So I'll go back here. You can see the difference in deployment of solar systems just over the last 5-6 years. So that's another reason why I wanted to highlight the work that Goshen has been doing as a city, and then how that's translated into this movement to help make it easier and faster for people to go solar before the end of the year. If people want to find out more information about Solarize Northern Indiana, they can go to solarizeni.org and RSVP for a workshop. We have 3 more remaining on August 17th in South Bend, August 22nd in Goshen, and August 24th in South Bend. All right, so before I wrap it up, I wanted to highlight that there are Solarize initiatives in other communities in Indiana. For example, Bloomington just launched a phase 2 after having a successful phase 1 this spring and summer, which resulted in nearly 100 new solar installations in the city. And for a community of that size, I think that's very successful and quite impressive. So these initiatives are currently running in a number of cities as well. All right. I've included some contact information below if anyone wants more information about the initiatives that I'm not directly involved in. All right, so here is my contact information. I'm happy to discuss Solarize or answer any questions about the state policy changes and direct people to information about those topics. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Leah and MACOG for your leadership and support and expertise with the Solarize Northern Indiana projects in South Bend and Goshen. Leah is a bit modest. These would not have taken place without Leah's expertise and assistance. So thank you, Leah, for the work that's taking place there. Those pinpoints, I don't believe, would have been possible without your help. So thank you, Leah. I'd now like to turn it over to Trisha Tull of Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light. Trisha?
Thank you so much, Lauri. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar. Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light has been working with religious congregations across the state of Indiana for the past 5 years to increase both energy efficiency and renewable energy in congregational buildings. Because we work not just with homeowners, but with these larger and often older buildings, Lauri asked me to share what we've been doing and how these congregations have benefited. So just briefly, by way of introduction to our organization, Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light is one of 41 state chapters of the national organization Interfaith Power and Light. Our tagline is a faith response to climate change. In Indiana, the majority of our members are Christian, like the state itself, but besides Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox Christians, our leadership and congregations include Muslims and Jews as well as Christians. We draw explicitly on our role as faith-based environmental organization and on the traditions in all faiths that emphasize humility and respect toward nature. Indiana burns more coal per person than any other state, second only in absolute numbers to Texas, a much more populous state. Because coal is problematic both in terms of particulate air quality and in its contributions to climate change, every bit that we can do in Indiana to move to renewable energy has a great impact. At Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, we've seen households and congregations reducing their utility dependence in just a few years by 40, 50, or 60%. This is a large part of what HIPPL does to help congregations and their members. We work in advocacy for better policy And we have education through workshops, but it's our Using Energy Prudently program, and specifically our today. Since we started 5 years ago, HIPPL has garnered 4 large grants that have enabled 25 religious communities across the state to install solar arrays. These congregations range from Gary, South Bend, Elkhart, and Fort Wayne in the north to Bloomington and Jeffersonville in the south. They're Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, Baptist, Episcopal, Friends, Mennonite, Presbyterian, AME, UCC, Unitarian, and Evangelical. Their small panels are in South Bend: the Islamic Society of Michiana, Kern Road Mennonite Church, First United Methodist Church, Olivet AME Church, and St. Anthony de Padua Catholic Parish. Our most recent and largest array is at the Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary in Elkhart. Our arrays range in size from 4 kilowatts to almost 60. In all, our grants have fostered installation of 411 kilowatts of solar power across the state. Even though congregations, like other nonprofits, are unable to benefit from the 30% U.S. tax credit for renewable energy, they finally come out way ahead on these projects for a number of different reasons. First, even if there were no other mechanisms for this to make sense, even without the tax credit, the return is somewhere near double the investment. Second, the grant assistance we've been able to garner for congregations, sometimes up to $20,000 or $25,000, boosts substantially what they're able to install. Third, most congregations match their grant through donations from members who would much rather see their money going to something that's good for the environment and for their grandkids than to paying endless utility bills. Fourth, and this is very important in my mind, we structure the grants so that their effect is multiplied by including substantial energy conservation measures in the congregational buildings and in members' homes. Fifth, smaller utility bills for the permanent future means more money that can go to fulfilling the congregation's mission. Sixth, the congregations gain a reputation for forward-thinking environmental sustainability, for being green, through the publicity that they get by hosting others in the community in workshops on solar and conservation. And seventh, faith communities share an ethic of care for the poor and underserved and care for future generations. When we reduce our carbon footprint, we know we are doing what we can on behalf of low-income neighbors here and around the world who have contributed the least to climate change but stand the closest to harm's way, as well as for our own children and grandchildren and all creatures living on Earth that are affected by human impacts. In addition to the renewable energy, all of our congregations commit to serious reductions in their energy use within 3 years. Here are some statistics for energy conservation in the grant that was completed in 2015, and our subsequent grantees are on track to produce similar numbers. On average, as you'll see, this first 6 congregations reduced their electricity usage by 41%, and that is over and above the reduction that came through using solar panels, and their use of natural gas by 31%. In addition to energy efficiency in the worship buildings themselves, we engage members to reduce their energy at home. We ask that they reduce by 14%, but as you can see from the numbers on the right-hand side, they do much more than that. This work is ongoing, but by the time we finish the current grants, we estimate that we will have touched more than 1,000 households in this program alone, not counting the many households we've reached through other programs, such as our Task of the Month initiative. Every congregation that joins HIPPL opens its doors to offer workshops and events to challenge the community around them to learn about solar panels, energy conservation, climate change, and the care and nurture of congregational green teams. Many congregations and groups of congregations also offer films, screenings, special speakers, and field trips. We're finding that as the price of solar comes down and familiarity with the concept of solarizing churches builds, we are seeing momentum for moving ahead in the traditional way, from member donations, even when there is no assistance coming in from outside the congregations. For instance, 3 congregations that had already had solar arrays are this year in the process of adding to them, often more than doubling them. One of these, First Presbyterian in Jeffersonville, found they could more than double their array for $2 a watt, substantially less than what was paid just 2 years ago. With lead gifts from a couple of members and an offer from another to match gifts up to $5,000, and that match quickly met, the congregation raised $30,000 without any formal capital fund campaign. A second church, Trinity Episcopal in Bloomington, expects to nearly double its array, partly through member contributions and partly through its endowment fund. And a third congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Church in Bloomington, had signed the Paris Pledge to become carbon neutral by 2050 and used this moment to raise more than $42,000 from members to not only add to their own array, but to donate solar to help neighbors with low or moderate incomes, also to solarize. Last year, for the first time, we partnered in an Indiana Office of Energy Development grant application with 4 congregations from across the state who were truly prepped and ready for solar, to a greater degree than many we had seen before in prior grants. It was a great application with matching money from the congregations that tripled the $80,000 we were applying for. But for the first time, because of the small pool of state money available and the large number of applicants, we did not get a grant. The great news was that 2 of these 4 churches, Bethlehem United Church of Christ in Evansville and the Unitarian Universalist Church in Columbus, were able and willing to plow right on ahead and install solar last fall on their own. In addition, we're hearing about more and more congregations that don't even ask or wait for outside financial help, but go about getting solar panels on their own because they've become convinced that it is a good investment for their congregation's future financially, as well as a bold statement about their sense of mission in the world. Waterford Mennonite Church in Goshen, for instance, installed a 51 kilowatt system that provides more than 80% of their power. They did it through a conventional loan, and they carried out the installation themselves, so that the total cost, including site preparation, came down to about $1.54 a watt. As more congregations see others going solar, and as the prices continue to prove affordable, I believe we'll be seeing more and more of this. So thank you all so much, and that's my contribution on behalf of Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, and I look forward to our further conversation.
Thank you, Trisha. This is very inspiring, seeing how these various faith communities are able to make this work, and particularly the reasons why they're seeing this as being viable and effective, and seeing it multiply in the community is really exciting. So we appreciate the work that you're doing and that all of your fellow members and leaders with Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light are doing as well. So we've heard a lot of success stories today about solar in the state, and I just want to very briefly address how we here at South Shore Clean Cities can help you to be successful as well. For those of you who are not familiar, South Shore Clean Cities is a 501c3 nonprofit organization under the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities Coalition. Our mission has always been to reduce our dependence on imported oil while promoting the use of alternative fuels and alternative fuel vehicles. But over time, our mission has expanded and now includes being a resource for energy savings and renewable energy projects and programs for our members and our partners. I like to think of us as facilitators of opportunities. We work with our members in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to make the connections for the best options for each individual entity's needs in a way that will help them save the most money while being the most energy efficient. On our website, you have access to all of the federal and state incentives for fuels and for clean energy. Funding is always a major function of our coalition, and we do work diligently with our partners, which include MACOG, NERPC, the IBEW, and many, many others, to leverage purchasing power between and among communities, businesses, and nonprofit agencies. We've also successfully written millions of dollars in grant applications for members over the years and can help you with your grant needs as well. I would encourage anyone with an interest in implementing solar to contact us at 219-644-3690 or via our website at southshorecleancities.org. I'll say that again, southshorecleancities.org to learn more. We'd now like to open it up for questions. Let me see if we have any. I'm not seeing any. We'll give you a moment. If anyone has any questions, you may type them into the box on the right. As we're waiting, I will make mention briefly that this webinar is being recorded and will be available in its entirety on our website, again, southshorecleancities.org. We also have...
Leah, sorry.
Go ahead, Leah.
I just had a comment. I wanted to thank Hoosier Interfaith Power and Light, especially because of the momentum that their work helped to create in the South Bend area. Our steering committee has 4 representatives from 4 of the faith communities that they helped with the solar grant process, and that momentum really built, and I think now we have 6 or 7 faith communities represented on our Solarize steering committee. So that work has really continued to have a lasting impact here in South Bend.
Thank you, Leah. It was really nice to see the pictures of those 4 people that are working with you in the South Bend who are members of our solar churches.
That's fantastic. I'm still looking. I'm not seeing any questions. As we're waiting for just a moment longer, I'd like to encourage everybody to please, after the webinar concludes, to go to the events page on southshorecleancities.org and also to like us on Facebook. We have an extremely busy several weeks ahead, including our Sustainable Grounds Management Lunch and Learn on August 22nd, our National Drive Electric Week Ride and Drives in South Bend and Portage the week of September 11th, and our 5th annual Clean Air Golf Outing on September 19th. You can register for all of them on our website as well. Well, not seeing any questions, I think we'll go back around and let our presenters have any closing comments. Marc?
No, it's indeed very inspiring to hear some of these success stories. So thanks so much, Lauri, for bringing this group together here. I think that the key word that was just mentioned is momentum. I think that even with SB 309, as was pointed out by Leah, I think that there's a lot of momentum, and maybe there will be some short-term speed bumps here, but I think that there's a lot of reasons to be confident that we can overcome these speed bumps, and for that matter, continue to build a very sustainable solar route for the mid and long term. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you for participating, Marc. Leah?
Yes, I wanted to reiterate the role that a regional planning organization can play in something like a Solarize initiative. There was interest in launching Solarize in both South Bend and Goshen. However, by having MACOG involved, we're able to build upon that and have Solarize open for those in all 4 counties, Marshall, Kosciuszko, Elkhart, and St. Joseph, to actually participate. So we are not limited by the city limits and boundaries, and we have people signed up all over the 4-county area.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your participation. Trisha, I'm going to toss it to you. We did have a question about your contact information. If you could provide that in your closing comments as well, please.
Oh, certainly. So our website is www.hoosieripl.org, and that's HOOSIERIPL.org. And you can look at the website, find out more about us, and find out how to contact us. My own email address is Trisha Tull, TRISHATULL, at HoosierIPL.org, and I'd be interested to hear from you all. I have to say personally that probably the most exciting moment in this webinar for me was seeing what's happening in Goshen and what's changed over the last 5 years, because I'm down here in Jeffersonville, the other end of the state, and we're trying to, actually we're going to have our first Solarize information session this evening at the First Presbyterian Church, and we're finding that we are not sure that we're going to have the traction that some of the other Solarize initiatives around the state have already seen happen. So it's inspiring to see what is happening growth in one particular area in Goshen just in the past 5 years. And I believe that the Solarize initiative is about the most important thing that's going on environmentally in the state of Indiana right now, and it should prove to really change the conversation despite the net metering obstacle that we've encountered. And I also do think that it's going to be worthwhile for people to continue to consider solar even over the next 5 years as the net metering benefits begin to disappear. So I do encourage everyone who's with us to talk to your friends and neighbors, think about businesses that are nearby, and schools and other organizations that are nearby that could benefit from solar, and do spread the word.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trisha. And thank all of you for attending the webinar today. Again, remember this will be is being recorded and will be available in its entirety on southshorecleancities.com. I'm sorry, .org. And we look forward to assisting you with your solar and energy efficiency needs. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.